Hello, my name is Tate Hedke, and I am here from Medford Area Senior High School today, talking to you about my paper for Education 691 Professional Skills Development and my implementation and research plan, which which I had done for that class, addressing Wisconsin Teaching Standard 1 and 2. Wisconsin Teaching Standard 1 being that students know the subjects they're teaching, Wisconsin Teaching Standard 2 showing that teachers know how students grow. My research was focused around 14 freshman level students in their physical science class. I had students of varying abilities and varying disabilities as well, ranging from minor dyslexia all the way to students with autism coupled with intellectual disabilities, ADHD, habitual truancies, EBD issues, very, very wide range of students as well. I had one student who was LD and ELL leave me after the first couple of weeks, and then I had a sophomore join at semester who needed it for credit recovery purposes as well. The pre-assessment that I used with these students was focusing on interpretation of data skills, as you can see here on my paper. Interpretation of data skills is extremely important for students in the area of sciences, but also once they get into upper level social science classes, math classes, standardized test abilities, and also once they get in the real world, understanding advertisements and credit card rates, just basic life skills that they need. So I focused on taking these skills and seeing how students learn them, but also what some of the best practices are for teaching them. Initially, pre-assessment was just looking at some really simple charts and bar graphs. You can see that I had about a 62% on my baseline data over here, 62% scores from my students on average, 2 proficiencies, 11 non-proficiencies. This was, I feel, a pretty accurate reflection of my students' abilities at the time. Things you can see improved over the course of the semester with my mid-level assessments, which culminated in final assessment scores, which were not quite what I was hoping for and what my students were. I don't think that's really indicative of what they have learned through the semester as well. Interpretation of data skills prescribed by the ACT. We were teaching them the level 200 skills, which are very basic. Can they take a single piece of data off of a chart? Can they take a single piece of data and explain to you patterns on a chart? But also being able to find basic information in a text, and finally, being able to identify the basic features of a table, so understanding how these charts are constructed. So with my baseline data being that, I went through the next part of the school year integrating some of these chart and graph making skills throughout all the lessons that I taught that combined with the next generation science standards. I made sure to focus really on emphasizing these skills because the research I had looked at proved and showed that at any level, high school, collegiate, and even graduate, postgraduate level students and professors, that if people aren't using these skills frequently, they tend to lose them. So at any level of science class, whatever skills the teachers want students to have, they need to be taught early and they need to be refreshed often. Also, through my research, I learned that the best way to get students to absorb these skills and learn how to use them effectively is through hands-on approach. So I really try to avoid doing any of the typical bookwork, any of the typical worksheet type things, and I tried to do everything with a hands-on approach with my students. My final project for my students culminated in them making mousetrap powered cars like you see here while studying the NGSS standards, working with motion and forces. I had students make the cars, race the cars, collect their data, create graphic representations of their data, and then we took our final summative assessment and looking at the data that they gathered with the here on the Google Sheets. Um, I don't feel that the results of my assessments are really indicative of their skills. I think that final assessment that I had my students do was a little more difficult than some of the others that we did throughout the first part of the school year. And I think that my students probably, um, as you can see with the third mid review there, where I had 9 proficients and 3 non proficients, I don't know if my students were quite that skilled at this point, but I definitely know more than 2 of my students were proficient in the basic 200 level interpretation of data skills as prescribed by the ACT. And a lot of that disconnect there, I feel, is probably due to researcher error, not really having consistency with the difficulty of questions and what I was asking my students to do. Overall, I feel that my research has some really strong implications towards the fact that as science educators, we need to implement these interpretation of data skills, charting, collecting of data skills, because if students do not practice them frequently and practice them often, it's really easy for them to lose them and for it to not translate into their later on classes as they progress through high school and then eventually college. So thank you very much for taking the time, learning a little bit more about my paper for 691, and I hope that you have a great day.